Hello, and welcome to Balance and Bottom Lines with Rebecca. Today's episode is all about cryptocurrency. Joining us today is Kristianmagnuson. Christian has a PhD in biomedical engineering, cryptocurrency guru, fitness enthusiast, and influencer. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's great to be here.
Yes, thank you. Well, this episode is going to be pretty interesting, and I'm going to learn a whole lot. I know most bankers, we tend to shy away from crypto or dislike it due to some of the risk. And I personally don't know enough to make an informed decision. So I know we spoke a few years back and it wasn't something I was ready to tap into at that time, but today maybe you'll change my mind. So let's dive in. When
Let's
did
do
you,
it. Great.
yeah, when did you start learning about crypto?
Probably about 2015. I had a buddy who was telling me about Bitcoin, this digital currency. And I thought, well, how does that work? It's such an abstract idea. It's kind of hard to get your head around. But back, around 2015, I started looking into maybe how would I buy it. It was not easy to buy back then. Um, there's maybe one or two exchanges, but for the most part, people were kind of on Craigslist, and you have to find someone who's willing to sell it. And then you have to go to a bank and transfer money to them. And they would give you like a USB thumb drive that had the cryptocurrency Bitcoin on it. And so I kind of gave up. It just seemed like a really weird kind of thing. Um, there was a cryptocurrency exchange, which I didn't know about back then, called Mt. Gox, but they later crashed. So thank God I didn't get into them. But I just kind of kept up with it. And then, around 2016, 2017, there was basically Bitcoin runs on 4-year cycles, and I can get into that later with you. Back in 2017, Bitcoin started going up. It started hitting the news. And everyone was talking about, oh gosh, Bitcoin's gone from 2,000 to 4,000 to 8,000 to 12,000. Then you turn the news on the next day and it's 14,000 and 16,000. Everyone's trying to get in because it's, going up so much. By that time, Coinbase, which is a pretty popular exchange, was out, and you could, for the most part, they've got an app for your phone. You can do it via, your laptop, via the internet. You can make your own account and buy Bitcoin. There's other exchanges that we can get into, but really around 2017, kind of when the mania hit the news, is when I started to buy it.
Wow, that's interesting. What kind of intrigued you to dive into crypto?
Well, to be honest, for me, it was about making money. That was what intrigued me was this, they call it this magic internet money. I don't know if you've heard that before, this magic internet money. I thought, my God, this is going up $2,000 a day. I mean, I gotta, get in, and maybe I can make $50,000, in the next few months if I get in on this thing. But it wasn't until I really started to learn within the next year or two how it worked, which got me really enthusiastic about really what it is, what Bitcoin is. So we can get into what it is and why I think it's here to stay, and kind of what its benefits are over, say, the US dollar or using credit cards and that kind of stuff.
Well, let's go right into it. What is it?
Bitcoin is, now you can go online, you can look up these fancy definitions, Wikipedia, and it's going to say something like it's the first decentralized cryptocurrency, nodes, peer-to-peer payments, blah, blah, blah. Essentially, for me, what Bitcoin is, it's a digital store of value that can be exchanged between anyone in the world. You don't need a middleman. This is why the bankers don't like it. So you don't need a middleman. You can, you can exchange value with anyone for a very small cost. The neat thing is that, for instance, if I was going to go on to Chase Bank and I want to get, say, $10,000 out, chances are one of two things going to happen. They're going to say, A, we don't have that much money on hand. And even if they do, they're going to say, well, you need to sign these papers. Tell me what you're going to use it for. Or if I want to send money, let's say my family's from Sweden, or my family's from Europe somewhere. I want to send money internationally. It has to go through all these checks and balances through these different banks, all these Forex trading kind of things. And it can take weeks, to do these wire transfers. On Bitcoin, I can send, if I have $1 billion, I can literally send $1 billion across the world to my friend within 5 minutes for about $5. It doesn't have to have any sign-offs. No banker has to wave their hand, and it's not 3 to 5 business days, and then another 3 to 5 business days, and there's no, transfer fees and blah, blah, blah. It just gets sent. So to me, that was kind of neat.
When
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you first dove into it, what was the price of a Bitcoin? Do you recall?
Yeah, this was around 2017. I think the price was probably around 12,000, and since then it went up to about 20,000 at the top of that cryptocurrency bull market, and then it crashed back down. I think, gosh, it was down to like $4,000 after COVID happened. I think it went down that low, so it does fluctuate quite a bit. So it kind of gets a bad rap, I think, because of the fluctuation.
Yeah. Well, when I looked earlier, it's somewhere in the 40,000 range now, right?
It is,
Am
yeah.
I- yeah.
It is, yeah. It's
Yeah.
around
it's gone up
43,000. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 It's about 43,000
So
today.
what drives? So when more people put money in, the cost, one coin goes up, right?
Mhm. Yeah, it's all about supply and demand. And so now we can get it in kind of, to understand what drives the price, you have to understand how Bitcoin works, because Bitcoin runs on 4-year cycles. And what I mean is every 4 years, there's a halving event. And a halving event means that the amount of Bitcoin that gets released every day gets cut in half. And so there's a supply shock that happens, every 4 years. And so we're getting ready to come up on a Bitcoin halving in April. So this is a once in a 4-year activity. And when that supply shock happens, then only half the amount of Bitcoin is released into the system. On top of that, what we have the trifecta this year, probably even the quadfecta this year, because Bitcoin runs on a 4-year cycle that also is coincidentally the same 4-year cycle as our presidential elections. This year, we got an ETF, an exchange traded fund, approved for Bitcoin. So now the big players in the financial markets, they can actually buy Bitcoin. The BlackRocks of America, the big, the $10 trillion financial firms, they can buy Bitcoin now. It was very hard for them to buy it before because they just didn't have the security that they have now. But that ETF was just approved here about 2-3 weeks ago. And so the buying has started. So you have all that buying. And now you have the halving event coming up in a couple months. So the supply is going to get cut in half. It gets released. So it's going to cause a pretty big price appreciation for the rest of the year going into next year as well.
So if I was wanting to buy in now, I would need to have that 43,000 to buy one coin, correct?
That's actually not correct. Now we get into kind of how Bitcoin works. Another interesting thing is no one knows who created Bitcoin, believe it or not. It's a pen name, Satoshi Nakamoto, this Japanese name. Nobody knows for sure who this person is. Most people who know think it was an old cryptographer by the name of Hal Finney. Hal Finney died of some kind of neurological disease, and Hal Finney was the original person to start mining Bitcoin. This person, if it is Hal Finney, has over 1 million Bitcoin on his computer, and he's passed away. So nobody will ever get to see that. He's the highest. Satoshi owns 1.1 million Bitcoin. So if you take 1.1 million times 40,000 of Bitcoin,
Wow.
and that wallet, we can see that wallet on the blockchain. We can see the activity, the inflows, the outflows, like a ledger. There has been zero inflows and outflows to that wallet for the past decade or ever. So there has been no spending, no depositing. Nothing's ever moved. It's gone forever.
But you can still see it. So it's not technically, it is money, right? He invested money.
It is. It's a store of value. It is. And if that wallet was to ever open, it would probably not be good for the price of Bitcoin. But chances are, if this is Hal Finney, that nobody would ever know how to get into maybe his computer is gone. Maybe his computer is in some garbage disposal or some big garbage field somewhere. It's been run over by bulldozers and stuff like that. But we think that money's gone forever.
Wow. That's
because we can see on the blockchain, we can see everyone's wallet. We can see every transaction on the blockchain. So in that respect, Bitcoin is very transparent. The thing is, you don't know who owns that wallet. You don't have a name associated with the wallet.
you can see any and everyone's wallet. You just don't know whose it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what happens when someone pulls their money out?
They can either send their money to someone else, or they can send it to an exchange to cash it out. And so I know that I didn't quite get to your question. I was kind of going roundabout, but you don't need $43,000 actually to buy a Bitcoin. Think of a Bitcoin as like $1, and $1 can be divided into pennies. So one Bitcoin can be divided into something called a Satoshi.
Wow.
So there are 100 million Satoshis in one Bitcoin. So as of today, I looked, and I think a Satoshi is worth about 1/10 of a penny or something like that.
So you could essentially buy into, or, let's call it stock, buy into that stock. So you don't have to buy an entire Bitcoin yourself. And then
That's correct.
As the price of that Bitcoin goes up, your return on your original investment will go up.
Yeah, that's right. And it's essentially divisible almost infinitely. If you want to think about it, if you have $18 to invest, let's just say $18, you can literally buy $18 worth of Bitcoin. So it might be 0.001 Bitcoin, which is equivalent to, 100 Satoshis or something like that.
Yeah. So, why dive into Bitcoin over your, standard investments, or, you working with your banker, or, an Edward Jones per se? Why dive into Bitcoin and manage that yourself?
Well, there's really two reasons. And everyone's a little different, but for me, there's a lot larger potential for gain. I mean, Bitcoin is the best performing asset in the past decade by far. You couldn't buy any stock and get the return you made on Bitcoin. There's just no way. The second is it's what's programmed into Bitcoin is that there will only be 21 million Bitcoin ever produced. And I have my theories on why Satoshi picked 21 million. I think it had to do with his price prediction and what the M1 money supply was at the time in 2009. This happened right after the housing crash of 2008. So Bitcoin was released January 3rd of 2009 was the first block that was mined. But so there's only 21 million Bitcoin that can ever be mined, right? Of that 21 million, around 4 to 6 million of those are lost forever. So it's actually a deflationary asset when you look at it that way. As of today, there are about 19 million Bitcoin that are mined. And so there's going to be another, say, 1.5 to 2 million mined over the next 100 years. So it's an asset that, like, we inflate our dollar like crazy. I was just looking up, what a dollar was worth like 100 years ago. It's just crazy. So Bitcoin is actually going in the opposite direction of that.
That's interesting. Wow. It's crazy. So, for someone like you that's been in it for a while, the risk or the benefit outweighs the risk for you. But what are some risks? Because I know, well, before we dive into that, I mean, I've had people, hit me up through DM trying to talk about this topic and, how they turned this person's amount of money into this and don't you want to do it? And, when people are pushing, that kind of it puts me on the defense. Like this person's up to something I don't trust, who is this person if I don't know them? So what are some risks involved?
So with Bitcoin, particularly if you buy in, say at the top, there's a huge risk of losing a lot of money. That's probably to me, one of the biggest risks. Another risk is if you don't have the knowledge and you try to buy and save it on your own hard drive, there's a chance that you could lose the password or whatever, and you could lose your Bitcoin. That's why I would suggest for new users for them to use like Coinbase or something like that. But probably the biggest risk is probably if someone's looking short term, then they're probably going to potentially lose money.
Makes sense. Well, new to me. So, just what you would tell someone is that you can start small. It sounds like, you don't have to have a lot of money to invest. And you can start with $5, $10, it sounds like. And potentially, as that Bitcoin increases, your investment will increase. And then you can buy another one or buy multiple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what I would suggest is I do something called dollar cost averaging, which just means like if I'm on a 2-week pay period, then every paycheck I put whatever I can afford to buy, if it's $100 or $1,000, whatever it is, just buy. If you're looking at a long-term investment, Bitcoin is fantastic. I think anyone looking to invest today, if they have a year horizon, you're going to make money off it. I don't know what the price will be in a year, but I think it'll be over 100,000 if I had to guess, or close to it. And also to keep in mind, Bitcoin is just one of the cryptocurrencies. There's, as of today, like 12,000 cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
And as of today, Bitcoin's market cap is 844 billion. The total cryptocurrency market cap is 1.73 trillion. So, we look at, we call Bitcoin a store of value. What people like to equate Bitcoin to is gold, because, Bitcoin's, you're not really going to buy coffee with it. It's kind of where you put your savings and where you want to appreciate. Well, people used to do that with gold, but Bitcoin it's just so much easier to use than gold. I mean, Bitcoin is divisible by a penny. If I can send $5 worth of Bitcoin. For me to send $5 worth of gold would be very difficult. Plus, it'd be hard to get it somewhere. It's hard to carry it. It's heavy. And so right now, the gold market cap is $12 trillion. And so if Bitcoin reached the level of the gold market cap, one Bitcoin would equal $700,000.
Wow.
So just something to put in perspective.
Wow. That's crazy. Now, the term mining has been thrown around a lot. What is mining?
So yeah, mining is, this is how Bitcoin is created. And so a Bitcoin is mined every 10 minutes. And so, like I was talking about, there's a halving coming up on April 22nd. So what will happen in this halving is that the amount of Bitcoin that's released into the system will be cut in half. So April 22nd, the additional supply will decrease from 900 to 450 Bitcoin per day. And the math on how that works out is there's a Bitcoin block that's produced like every 10 minutes. And in that block, there's a whole bunch of transactions. And so what miners are doing is they're verifying the transactions as well as doing this cryptography. So they're solving this very difficult math problem. And when they do that and they all come to a consensus, so there's thousands of computers on the Bitcoin network, 51% have to come to a consensus on this ledger of every 10 minutes. And when that happens, whoever mined the block that solves the problem first, they get the Bitcoin. So that gets released into the system.
Mm, wow.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the first Bitcoin halving was November 28th of 2012, and the reward went from 50 down to 25. And then July 6th of 2016 went from 25 to 12 and a half. Right now, we are at 6.25 Bitcoin per block. And so on April 22nd, the reward gets cut in half from 6.25 down to 3.25.
Wow. Mm. Do you see the government stepping in and, cracking down on some regulations? Like, do you foresee that happening?
And that's a great question. The government's tried.
Mm-hmm.
The government's tried. China's tried. It's very, very difficult. I mean, it because Bitcoin is and if you look us up on Google, you could say, Google, tell me where all the computers on the Bitcoin network are. It's across the world. It's across Europe. It's across China. It's across Japan. It's across South America, Central America, Canada. So it'd be very difficult for the USA to come in between all that,
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really difficult for the government to step in. That's really another allure of Bitcoin, is that the government can't tax it. They can't really step in. I mean, they could say it's illegal to mine Bitcoin in America, or they could be like China and say, if you get caught using it, you're going to go to jail. But how do they catch you using it? So it's very difficult for the government to get involved and to stop it.
And so, again, I think you touched on this at the beginning. How, if someone wants to cash out or, get out of it, how do they do that?
That's a little bit tricky because you have to use what we call an off ramp. So in cryptocurrency, we have something called an on ramp and an off ramp. The on ramp is how you get your money kind of onto an exchange or into a cryptocurrency, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever it is. In order to cash out, you typically have to use an exchange as an off ramp. There's also some ways to get around that. There's brokers around the world that you could, if you have a lot of Bitcoin, that you could send these to these brokers and they'll cash out for you and they'll send you a wire transfer. But that's kind of niche. That might be for people that have made millions of dollars that want to hide it. But in general, what I use is Coinbase. Coinbase directly links up with my Chase bank account. And so if I want to cash out, I just sell on Coinbase. I sell my Bitcoin. It goes into US dollars on my Coinbase account. And then what I say is I ask Coinbase to cash out. And when I cash out, that money is instantly transferred to my Chase account. So literally, like as fast as I can hit cash out on Coinbase, and then I open my Chase app on my phone, the money is there like within 3 seconds. It's pretty amazing.
Wow. So it's not as hard as I would, or hard as someone would think it would be. It sounds like it's pretty easy.
It is now. Of course, the exchanges can shut you down. So they use a lot of verification. Two-factor authentication is used in a lot of these. But really, in the US, there was a lot of exchanges that went down last year. They were very fraudulent. You probably saw the news on all those, the FTX collapse and
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff. But as of today, you've got Coinbase, you've got Gemini, um, you've got Robinhood. You can buy Bitcoin on Venmo, on PayPal. Um, the Venmo and PayPal and the Robinhood, you're buying actually like derivatives, I believe. You're not actually buying the Bitcoin. So if you want to buy the actual Bitcoin itself and hold it on your own wallet or send it to someone, then you need to use like Coinbase or Gemini. Or you can, there are a lot of exchanges like around the world that if you're in the US, you can't use. But if you have a VPN that changes basically where your computer broadcasts that you are, then you can log into these exchanges. I'm not supposed to say that, but if you have a VPN that shows you're from Argentina, then you can log on to some of these others, exchanges.
Wow. For what I brought up about people getting in my DMs and, saying, oh, I made this person so much money and come invest with me. Would you recommend someone to, if someone is reaching out to you, to me, it's probably not legit, so how do you decide what is actually legit and what's not? Any advice or recommendations that you would have since you've been in it for a while?
The typical question I get is which coin should I buy? Um, and I mean, I'll give friends a list of coins I think are gonna. Now, quite frankly, um, there are coins that are gonna 10x this year in 1 year.
Wow.
So if you have $10,000 to invest in 1 year, you're gonna have $100,000. I actually invested in a coin. This was pure luck that I got 1,000x off of. 1,000x.
Wow.
I literally bought $1,000 or $100 worth, and I forgot about it. There's a long story behind it, but it can happen. So I would say, like, pretty much all my friends that have come to me and asked me what to buy, they would probably use Coinbase or Robinhood. They would buy those coins. Some of my friends ask me what to buy, and I tell them they just don't want to go through the process of setting up an account on Coinbase or whatever. So they just don't do it. But I, do your own research. I really believe that this is going to be a good year for Bitcoin and all cryptocurrency. I think this is the typical bull market of the 4-year cycle is going to be this summer, this fall, this winter, and then into 2025, probably mid 2025 is where it'll stop. That's the typical kind of calendar that it follows.
Wow.
And like I was saying before, we've got this presidential election.
Mm-hmm.
We have the halving event. We have interest rates that have peaked probably. The Fed consensus, I think, is we think we might get a rate reduction, maybe March, maybe May. And when the rates start coming down, there may be some money printing along with the election to make the economy look better. There's just a lot of things that are happening this year that create this kind of perfect storm. So
yeah. So when your Bitcoin hit and you realized, oh, I made this money, did you then turn around and move it out or move it into something else or cash it out? Or do you leave it in there? Because I know I've heard people say that, get your money out before, because when everybody starts pulling out, it's going to drop.
yeah, that's good. So the one I did, the 1,000x, that was not Bitcoin. That was a small micro cap cryptocurrency. And what I did with it is I cashed it out and I reinvested it, into different cryptocurrencies. But you really need to have your ear to the ground and be close to it, because you don't want to be, if you know the 4-year cycles, I don't think you want to be in Bitcoin when the bear market comes, because I don't think the bear market is going to be as bad as it was in the previous years, just because Bitcoin is a lot bigger than it used to be. Think of it as like a big boat. It's just harder to move it now because there's so much more money coming into it. So it's not going to be as bad, but the smaller cryptocurrencies, I would suggest taking profits along the way, because you get greedy, then you're going to If you don't take profits, then the market will take them for you, is what they say.
Yeah.
In cryptocurrency.
So cash some stuff out, move some stuff around. So just keep it flowing. Don't let it lie dormant.
Yeah, and really, I've pretty much learned everything I know about it from guys on YouTube. So you find a couple of good channels, you're going to understand the 4-year cycle. You're going to understand that this year's historically a really good year into next year, and probably by late 2025, prices are going to start coming down. You don't want to be in the market, especially with altcoins like Ethereum. Not really Ethereum, but like these lower cap altcoins. They could go. One altcoin can go from $10 to say $300 in the span of 1 year. That's a 30x. But if you don't take profits at the top, then you're going to lose that money. And we know that typically what happens in the crypto market is that Bitcoin goes up first. So Bitcoin is the kind of the big boat that brings all the water into the area, that raises all the smaller boats. And so the Bitcoin brings all that money in. And as it's peaking, people start taking profits out of Bitcoin, and they start putting these in the bigger altcoins, the Ethereums, the Solana, the Chainlink, and then these start to run. And so a month or two after Bitcoin peaks, these altcoins start to run. And then as those run and they start to peak, money comes out of those and they go in the mid cap and the small cap altcoins. So now those start running. So those have another couple months. And that's how it's been for the past couple cycles. And I expect that it'll probably be the same way this time.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially it sounds like what you're saying is now's definitely the time to get in. Get in and then be prepared to get out by 2025.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you buy today at 43,500 and next week it's at 39,000, who cares? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is don't get frustrated about it, because when Bitcoin hits 100,000, you're not going to care if you bought it at 43,000 or 40,000, doesn't matter. If you want, a secure cryptocurrency investment, buy Bitcoin. If you want a little more gain, you go for something like Ethereum. If you want more than that, you start looking at Chainlink and Solana, and then you start getting into the smaller altcoins, and from there on.
Yeah.
Just depends on your risk.
Yeah. So, for someone who may have a little bit to play with, what would be a good, I know I've asked this question and we kind of touched on it, what would be a good sweet spot to start that's going to gain a little bit? And I know, it just depends on how many people are putting into that. So you really can't say exactly. But if it was you and you had a little bit of money and you're just entering the market, would you just go a little, dip your toe in? How far would you go?
I mean, it depends on your age and your risk, how much money you have. I like to better put it as more of a percentage. If you're like total degen, like some people, then you put it in these small altcoins and you get 100x. You're lucky. But for the normal average person, I would suggest 40, 50% Bitcoin, probably 30% Ethereum. Ethereum is going to have an ETF, I believe. There was talks today, it might be approved this spring or this summer. That ETF gives the ability for all these big financial companies to sink all their money into it. I mean, BlackRock's $10 trillion company. It's just mind-blowing how big it is. And they've been waiting, they've been salivating to get their hands on Bitcoin for a long time, but they couldn't buy it because the SEC wouldn't approve this ETF. Yeah. Finally, Gary Gensler and the SEC finally approved it. BlackRock's got the strong hand in that case. So now it gives them an opportunity to put all this money in Bitcoin. So the same is going to come for Ethereum. And the price is going to run on Ethereum because of that. We think it could happen as soon as May and maybe a little later than that. But when Ethereum gets the green light, then you're going to have Solana gets the green light, the green light, Chainlink gets the green light. That's the green light for all these big institutions to flood these billions of dollars into cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And so,
Wow. This is really interesting stuff.
It's deep.
Yes, yes, very deep. I've learned a lot today. Those of you listening, I'd love to hear your thoughts and experience on these topics. Christian, if you'd like to share with the audience how they can contact you.
Yeah, absolutely. We can leave a link below, but I've got my email is kristianmagnuson@gmail.com. We can also leave a link to my LinkedIn, my Instagram, and my Facebook.
Yeah, awesome.
Yep. And I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm going to give you straight shot answers. I'm not trying to sell anything. I just want people to take advantage of it while they still can, because in 10 years, if Bitcoin is $1 million, which it could be, then it's going to be hard to get into.
Yeah. Well, people taking advantage will also help you already being in the market and everybody else, because the more
That's true.
people that put money in, the more yours grow. So, yeah.
Yeah. And there's a really interesting thing that, and I know we're almost to the end, so I'll just say this one last thing. There's only 21 million Bitcoin ever. But as of today, there's 19.6 million that have mined out of 21 million. But only 4.6 million of those are sort of floating around in the market. So I just checked today, there's 2 million Bitcoin available on exchanges. There's 2.6 million Bitcoin that are in short-term holders' wallets. Just to put some perspective, there's only 4.5 million Bitcoin circulating. The rest of it is either in long-term wallets like Satoshi, or people that won't sell, or it's lost. And then to put that in perspective, there's about 50 million millionaires in the world. So if every millionaire in the world wanted a Bitcoin and there's only 4 million Bitcoin circulating, that means that every millionaire could only have a 10th of a Bitcoin.
Wow.
So it's getting very scarce as we speak already.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'll have to go to the old Google and learn a little bit more. So,
Yeah.
details of how to contact Christian or myself will be in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more insightful discussions. Thank you for joining us on Balance and Bottom Lines with Rebecca. Remember, the balance between personal well-being and professional success is key. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, keep striving for excellence in both your personal and professional life. Thank you so much, Christian.
Thanks, Rebecca. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you.